so I ran Sebring several times as a driver, and you spent a good deal of your time just setting a pace, running what you thought you could run 12 hours, and preserving the equipment and making sure you didn't hit anything. But to me, that wasn't as much fun as a USRC or Can-Am race where you went out and ran about as hard as you could run from start to finish. And I just enjoyed that kind of racing more. But to answer your question, I really did enjoy our win at Sebring in 1965, and it was a good fortune in some ways. We really it was unusual that we were even there. I think Alec Ullman had some trouble always at the first of the season getting the factory teams to come and bring the whole show. And he decided that he wanted to try to liven it up. USRC had run well that year in the States, and I was leading the championship in the middle of the season, and so we were contacted about running down there, and we decided we'd try it. We finished the season in the sprint races, and we went down for a test at Sebring, and as somebody else mentioned, it was quite a rough track, and our cars had typically just ran 200 miles, and we had good reliability by the end of 1964. The cars were fast and reliable, and pretty easy to drive, and we thought quite durable. Anyway, we spent the whole day running at Sebring, and all we really worked on was the suspension. We worked on the springs and the shocks, and to try to get the car to ride the bumps and not beat it up too bad. I think we had one advantage that people didn't recognize. We had a torque converter in the drivetrain, so that it cushioned the shocks of the drivetrain to some extent, and that probably helped us on longevity. And of course, it rained like you just cannot imagine on race day. We had a good weather forecast, and so when we started out, Hap and I just decided we'd set a good, even pace and see if we couldn't put some distance between ourselves and the rest of the field. And Dan Gurney and Lotus took off quickly. I've always been of the opinion that you ought to get in your car and fasten your seatbelt and drive. I mean, if you're going to run 12 hours or 24 hours, that 40 seconds or 20 seconds it takes to put on your seatbelt and harness is not important. So all the drivers that have driven for me in endurance races and myself, we just get in, put on our seatbelt, and go. And we're usually not the first to leave the line. In any case, Dan was out ahead, and I realized that I was closing in on him, and I was just trying to set a pace that I could run and be comfortable and know the car was not being abused. And I started to close and finally I passed Dan to lead the race. And he kept trying to stay with me, and his car blew up, and so we kept going, and by the time the rains came in the afternoon, I don't know, 4:30 or something like that, it was a tremendous thunderstorm that just dumped all kinds of water on the track, and at that point we had 4-lap lead, which sounds shocking, but that's what we had. And so it's rained so hard that first lap, I signaled I was going to come in. I went by one, signaled that I was going to come in and finish the tires and for them to get ready, made another one. By the time I made the second lap, I went through one puddle that our car was on the ground clearance about like this to the radiator opening on the bottom. Water came in through that opening, over the windshield into the cockpit. And
oh, God.
I was amazed. So by the time I got back to the pits, we had a chassis that was made like a tub. You sat down in it, and it was about 10 to 12 inches high, and it was my car was full of water flow. It was running out the door. And so I stopped and got out, and Hap was going to jump in, and I held him. I said, wait a minute. So we went back and we talked, and I said, Hap, how fast are they running now? Our time said, well, they're running 12-minute laps. And I said, oh, they are. Well, and the next one we timed on somebody was longer than that. I got to my time. I said, wait, we can wait an hour if we want. install this thing because it's a little difficult to start with our transmission. You start it in gear, so you can't start it in neutral and then put it in gear. You have to put it in gear, start the car, and then leave. And sometimes it doesn't start as easy, and we had a small battery in it, and so that was one of the things that concerned me. Was keep it going, don't spin it, and don't stop it out there on the track. And he took off, and I have to say he did a really superb job. He drove as it started getting dark, and he was in the car for I don't know, an hour or a bit more before it got, maybe an hour and a half was our run, and he came back in, and he was cold, and I was talking to him about it, and I said, well, how big are the puddles? And he said, well, they're still pretty big, it stopped raining a while ago, but he said there's a lot of puddles, and you got to be careful. And I said, well, is it possible you could drive one more hour? The look on his face. He looked at me, and I could see the look on his eyes, and he said, that's probably the smart thing to do. And he took off and drove another hour, and so I got to finish the race and pretty much dry, and I just wanted to tell you how good a job Hap did for us, and it was a great race for us because our car, nobody gave us any chance whatsoever to win that race. When we went down there, it was a sprint car, and yet it made it 12 hours, and it was still going strong at the end, so I was really proud of that.